This is Richard Wolff responding to another Ask Prof Wolff question from our Patreon community, and in this case from Ryan Bentley, a member of that community. This is Richard Wolff for Democracy at Work. Ryan contrasts how working class young people are educated. Be honest, be hardworking, apply yourself, give yourself to the job. Because if you aren't, you will either be fired or, if you're really dishonest, perhaps go to jail. And Ryan contrasts that with the business owner or business leader mentality, which is do whatever the market allows you to do, get around rules and regulations as best you can, because you will be evaluated and your life will be determined by how profitable you make your business. There's a kind of ruthlessness in the one that is not supposed to be there in the other. And so Ryan wonders, is it reasonable to expect that if workers actually took over enterprises, if worker co-ops replaced top-down hierarchical capitalist businesses where all the key decisions are made by those ruthless types at the top, is it reasonable to expect that the worker co-ops, governed perhaps more by honesty and hard work, won't make it, won't be able to survive, won't be able to compete in a market with ruthless competitors? Well, let me respond in two ways. One, by telling you what the historical record is, and then by explaining why it is that way. First, here's the historical record, which is easy. And we know this because of the history of actual worker co-op companies, how they've done, how they've competed with capitalist enterprises, and what the results were. First, we have it in the case of the world's most successful worker co-op business, the Mondragon Cooperative Corporation, based in the city of Mondragon in north of Spain. They've been at it for over 70 years. They began in 1956, and here we are in 2020. And what we know is they've grown from an original 6 workers in the first co-op to over 100,000 employees now. That's a clear record of success. Across all those years, the Mondragon co-ops, it's actually a family of over 100 co-ops, those co-ops have had to compete with capitalist enterprises. And in those co-ops, in that competition, in Spain and beyond Spain, over the last 70 years, the Mondragon worker co-ops did just very well. They won many, not all of course, but many of those competitive struggles. The capitalist enterprises were defeated, many of them dissolved, and their business was taken over, and also their workers sometimes found jobs in the Mondragon co-ops. So the historical record is clear. But if that wasn't enough, and of course that's just one example, we have the comprehensive research of a professor at the Leeds, in Britain, Leeds School of Business, Virginie Perrotin by name. She's a very well-known business professor, and she's devoted much of her research to comparing the competitiveness of worker co-ops with regular capitalist businesses. And her research shows, it's published, that the cooperative workers are very often able to outcompete capitalist enterprises. Do all worker co-ops succeed? Of course not. They too are subject to mistakes. They are too also subject to misestimating the demand for their goods. People's tastes change, and so what the worker co-op makes may no longer be saleable, and it may be too difficult for them to make a transition to something else. Ups and downs occur in all ways of organizing business, worker co-ops too. But the notion that they are somehow incapable of competing with capitalist enterprises, that's not correct. And let me tell you briefly in conclusion why that is. The answer has to do with the endless, irrepressible conflict, tension, antagonism between employer and employee. When those are different people, they form different communities. There's a certain solidarity among business owners and top executives on the one hand, and a very different but equivalent kind of solidarity among workers. One is forever squeezing the other to get more profits. We know that story because we mostly, all of us, live it. And likewise, the community of working people takes a certain comfort and pleasure in evading the supervision of those at the top, in finding the moment to take a break in the bathroom, finding the moment to chat with a coworker, even if it does do a little bit of damage to the flow of output, because that's not the top objective of the worker, which is to get through the day's job, versus the employer, which is to squeeze every last bit of profit out of the business as possible. In that kind of a conflict, in that kind of a attitudinal breakdown of solidarity because of the different objectives, the different interests of the two groups, you could see problems arising. Things become inefficient because of the tension. Things become less than smooth because of the opposition between them. One of the enormous advantages of a worker co-op is to end that kind of antagonistic relationship right in the core, in the heart of the production process, by making it no longer a case of two communities with different interests battling one another, but rather internalizing it, if you like. It's all one community, with all that that means. It's one community that has to get all kinds of work done, supervisory work, production work, oversight work, you name it, and has to distribute it amongst itself, and has to do that in a way that avoids destructive antagonism. And it can do that because it's one community, not two opposed communities. That's why often worker co-ops can achieve efficiencies. A worker co-op who owns their own business will be very careful to turn out the light in the bathroom before they leave for the day, in the way that a worker in most capitalist enterprises has to be driven and punished and still won't do it in the same spirit or in the same way. You know, it's the old adage that most of us know, that if you have skin in the game, if you have an interest in what's going on, if you own something, you take a bit better care of it than if you don't, than if somebody else does. We know that in home owning. We know that in how people take care of collective property. That's how it will be in a worker co-op. No reason to worry about competitiveness. Worker co-ops have the capacity, have shown historically the capacity to be every bit as competitive and efficient, if not more so, than capitalist enterprises.